Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. I'm handing over to Dr. Ortel. Dr. Ortel, over to you.
Trying to unmute. Am I audible, colleagues?
We can hear you clearly. Thank you.
All right. Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the webinar that is hosted by Summer, and we're going to speak about shaping the leaders in healthcare in South Africa. So this is June month, is Youth Month, and we'd like to bring together a group of expert voices to explore the journey of leadership development within the healthcare profession. So through engaging with this presentation, we'll unpack how you can be mentored within shaping medical careers and practicing mindfulness and the role of artificial intelligence, as well as understanding substance abuse in the healthcare setting. So I think that is enough of an introduction, and we'll get right into it. So our first speaker is our CEO of Summer, Dr. Nodikida. He's got a vast CV, which I've summarized briefly. So he did do his undergrad studies in Cuba. So he does have Spanish as one of his first languages, and then he's gone on to hold various management positions, and now he's the CEO at Summer, a very astute business person. And we are looking forward to his presentation. So he'll be speaking to us about AI in the healthcare space. So, Dr. Nodikida, without further ado.
Thank you very much, Dr. Otto, and really appreciate the opportunity that your colleagues have given me to share one of my passions, by the way. And it is a little bit sad, Dr. Otto, that I no longer qualify to call myself a young person. in terms of in terms of the definition of young people in South Africa. I hope the colleagues can see my screen. Can I confirm, Renee?
We can see your screen. Thank you, Dr. Nodikida. You can go ahead.
Okay. So, colleagues, I am just going to talk through the one of my passions, which is AI in healthcare. And I was also proud today that we're looking at possible mentoring some of the young doctors who are interested in leadership within the health space. And I must say that we do need young people in this space. We emphasize at Summer the issue of leadership and governance as one of the important pillars as identified by the WHO. So I will just briefly cover, I hope my slides are moving. So I'll briefly cover AI and why is it important, its application in healthcare. I'll talk about AI in healthcare leadership. We'll look at some of what was found by a study that was conducted by Philips among global health leaders on the impact of AI within the health space. We will then look into the South African picture, and you will be the judges if the country has the leaders that it needs in terms of leveraging technology and artificial intelligence in healthcare. And we'll deal with what the South African Medical Association in its work is as in an attempt to lead the health within the health sector is proposing as the first step towards making sure that the country actually get universal health coverage and develop its own technological infrastructure that could rival the banking infrastructure. So we'll cover those topics. So AI is not. It's actually very old. I was surprised when I read that it actually was started being used in around the 1950s. And yeah, so it's not something that is new, but when a computer starts to 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 perform tasks that are associated with human intelligence, like learning, decision making, and visual perception and speech recognition, that's basically what AI is about. And there you've got the different levels or categories of AI. And one that fascinates me is, in fact, deep learning, which is basically layers of the neural networks. And and for us as medics, this is not something very far. So my next slide, actually, those of you who've been to med school will remember some of these pictures in your basic formation years of medicine in physiology, especially when we're dealing with the nervous system. So this is the it mirrors this whole thing of AI and artificial neural networks. It mirrors how the brain works, you know, and then it deals with, because of course the computer talks. Rene will confirm this. It understands just zeros and ones. So of course, then it has to be coded. So you would have to get training in coding, but the basic understanding, which is AI 101, would be literally easy for doctors to understand with this basic understanding of how the brain works, because that's basically what it means. And when they talk about deep learning, it's how those layers are organized and how many layers exist, and the more you train those models and put in the inputs here with that data, then the machine can predict the answer, the possible correct answer. And that's another critical issue, because if you train the data with the wrong info, then whatever it is not really reliable. So colleagues, this is not far from us. And I think one of the things we're trying to do at Summer is to make sure that we do two critical things. One is to see if we can facilitate doctors being trained in AI, at least even if it's just an introduction. And we just had a discussion with the chairperson of the association to say we probably need to write to the South African committees of deans and also request that this training form part of basic training of medical students in med school. Because some global institutions have already started. There is a course that is available online from the Harvard Medical School on AI in healthcare. So if you are interested, you would have to look it up. I think it just costs just over 90,000 rand. But I think these things should start being introduced here locally so that people can be trained accordingly. I don't know why my slide is not moving. So these are some of the applications of AI in healthcare, which most of you would know. I think the radiologists are actually one of the first specialties to actually adopt AI and allow us to be able to do quite a lot of things with doctors not necessarily needing to be on site. This is critical, colleagues, in leadership in healthcare, because as you all know, the ministry here in South Africa has decided to review the human resource policies on healthcare. And this talks to how we work, because AI almost redefines our work environment. And these are the things that, as we conduct research and make contributions to the ministerial committee, we probably need to take these things into account. So let me just delve quickly on the leadership aspect. So today's leaders, which healthcare requires with the advent of technology and AI, need to go beyond just operational excellence and and what we call strategy development, but they need to be ready and be prepared to lead and take ownership of breakthrough innovation, and also manage the cultural change that is needed within organizations to actually take full advantage of the potential that AI brings. And they are key in decision making in terms of where in the system and when is this supposed to be incorporated and how. So the Philips study on the future of healthcare, they actually conducted a study and they spoke to leaders from 14 different countries globally. And they literally wanted to check how do leaders actually feel about healthcare, and what challenges would would AI actually solve within healthcare. So as you can see, the major problem within this space is data, because AI systems, the models that needs to be trained, they need reliable data. So if you don't have clinical data sets, or you don't have your data well integrated, then your models, you can't really train or your models in a reliable way. So 94% of these healthcare leaders, they indicated that in their organizations, they do experience at least one data integration challenge. So integration becomes a critical issue to solve. And Sama has done some studies just to check how do we compare as a country globally. We've seen that most Nordic countries have done very well in terms of integrating the multiple systems that exist within a country into one national infrastructure for technology in terms of interoperability. And that then helps them to perform almost miracles in terms of their health systems. The other thing that these leaders identified was that automating repetitive tasks like bookings and all of these things that are routine within our space is critical, because it allows the doctors themselves, the critical staff within the health system, to focus on what is critical, which is patient care. It saves professional time, but of course, there is that 65% of healthcare professionals who were slightly skeptical about the AI and its integration. Of course, most people think that AI might replace some health professionals, and this has been proven to be untrue. In fact, this is why most institutions are looking for doctors and specialists that can be trained in AI because of the knowledge that they have in their specialist field, so that they can work with the tech nerds, if I can use that term, to actually train these models. And I think the American Medical Association even changes the term AI and say there's nothing artificial about artificial intelligence. It's augmented intelligence, which helps doctors to actually do their work. So this is the picture, colleagues, from the leaders, the people who are currently leading healthcare in relation to the need for or the impact of AI in healthcare. So it's almost like a sun that is rising, that or has risen, that we cannot stop. We need to get ourselves ready and be prepared to provide the necessary clinical and ethical leadership that is needed there. So this is another study that was done by the OECD countries. We were invited, as some, of course, you would know that we don't form part of that community as South Africa. But we were invited as part of the medical associations that needed to participate in this. And of course, this is now narrowing it down to doctors, just their views about healthcare. In the main, there's positivity in terms of how the potential to transform healthcare. But of course, there are risks that are associated with privacy of patients and all of that. But I think the major risk is what we also raised with the HPCSA in terms of the liability. Who makes the decision? Who actually takes liability if the machine or something goes wrong with the machine? And that's the one of the critical issues that I think the leaders globally are grappling with from an AI point of view. One of the other things that is almost a major problem globally is that developed countries, or most of these tools are developed outside of the low and middle income countries, like the African continent. And some of these models are trained with data from where they were developed. And you could then have what we call algorithm biases. But of course, what we are advocating for is that these models must be trained with local data. And that's one of the reasons at Summer we are proposing what we are proposing from a technological infrastructure point of view. Let me run quickly now with the South African picture. Of course, there I'm putting the building blocks of a functioning health system from a WHO point of view. The African continent has since, I haven't updated my presentation, they have since added a seventh pillar, which is called health infrastructure. Of course, they say globally, most of these countries that are in the WHO do not necessarily have an infrastructural problem, but the African continent does have, as you would know, in where you colleagues work. I've highlighted leadership and governance just to say that it is one of the core components of these building blocks, and health information systems is actually critical. The South African government is focusing in the main on number 3, which is the health financing system through the NHI. But we think these are, you can't pick one. You gotta put these together for the system to work. So in the South African space, we have an outdated digital health strategy, which I hope the government will maybe just renew or review. This policy expired just after the elections in 2024. But if you look at the priorities that were set, I think these are important for the country. I mean, they're talking about digitalizing the health system business process. That's critical. For me, I am obsessed with bullet number 3, the establishment of an integrated platform and an architecture for health sector information system. This is fundamental. This is what would allow us to perform miracles like precision medicine and predictive medicine. So what does South Africa needs to do? I did indicate that we looked into some of these countries around the world. We found out that the countries that have integrated their systems actually work better. And it's not the US, it's the Nordic countries, and the global leader for these countries is Taiwan. So in South Africa, we've got 9 provinces. We've got 42 health information systems by the time of going to print. But we also, within the private health space, we've got fragmented electronic health records that do not even talk to each other, even if the company is one. So your information, if you are seen in one private institution in Gauteng, they can't get your information if you get to be in Limpopo some other day, let alone the integration between the public and the private sector. So your information, they have to ask you the same questions. The difficulty with the continuation of care, that data is not stored in a central, reliable national data source where it can be drawn on demand. So basically what we are proposing is a national digital infrastructure that could integrate all existing electronic health record. And we call this a universal health record for all South Africans. This is our contribution, colleagues, in terms of our leadership role as a National Medical Association. We, of course, modeled this from the Taiwanese system. And as you can see, they are using the what we call fast health interoperability resources, which is FIRE. Okay, I just jumped. This is the proposed system for South Africa. So you could be in any province in South Africa, but and still use whatever system that you think you have. But the ideal thing to do is to actually invest at national level so that you have this electronic record and they can actually interoperable connect to a one national data source that can be pulled at any given point when a patient gets in contact with the health system, regardless of whether they choose to go public or private. This information should be available so that it allows for continuation of care. And if you have this kind of data, I know that some of you have bank accounts and you know that you can even apply for a visa or a Pax, whatever, at the bank now, just by using your biometrics. So that's the kind of a system we envisage in healthcare. I know some of you here on this call might have treated patients in emergency rooms where a patient comes as unknown. And you, some of you have in your hospitals today corpse in your mortuaries that are unknown, and they probably would be buried by the state as unknown. If we have this system available, we're able to identify every patient that comes in. Just by using the biometric system, you can be able to get the information and download it, and be able to decision make and give whatever care you're supposed to give. And if the patient has got a medical aid, you can transfer. But critically for SAMA, I think this will allow South Africa to be able to perform what we call precision medicine. And predictive medicine. We can know today what the South African population is at risk of developing in the main. And we can do this by training models with our own data. One of the amazing things I saw in Taiwan as I close, Dr. Otto, and thank you very much, is that these guys, they could, with their own national data, they could, in fact, detect pancreatic cancer at the stage when you can actually operate. I think many of you know that in South Africa today, if somebody is diagnosed with the pancreatic, especially pancreatic head cancer, that person is probably gonna die in the next few months because it's detected late when you cannot do anything. So some of these things are things that they could help us to literally get to where we want to go from a universal health coverage point of view. I mean, I made the example of all our 10 central hospitals being connected to rural hospitals, and being able to provide and run high-risk clinics with doctors sitting here in Johannesburg, and running a high-risk clinic with colleagues that are trained in a rural district hospital, maybe in the Eastern Cape or in Limpopo. So that's that, colleagues, that I wanted us to share with you. But I really think it's important that as a medical association, we advocate for early introduction of artificial intelligence training in medical schools. Most of these universities have computer schools within the same university. So this is just a question of an integration, and making sure that in the basic years of formation of a doctor, the training is made available. Dr. Otela, I thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you to your colleagues for listening. Thank you.
CEO, thank you so much. Let me just get my, there we go. Thank you so much for an informative discussion. Yeah, it really triggered a lot of thoughts, and especially the unknown patients in hospital. There's always an unknown November, December, January, and then there's the unknown Easter as well. So I think with biometrics and so forth going forward, it will definitely help us. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions for the CEO. I see we've got a staggering 273 participants on the webinar tonight.
Wow.
I think that's a good turnout. I don't see any questions. Let me just go to the Q&A block. There was something about the screen.
That's good. That's good for me, Dr. Otel. It might mean that I was very clear or I was not understood at all.
Yeah. So I do have a question, COC, that nobody has a question. I see you're quite passionate about, healthcare leadership, and you were making mention, that there are these mentorship programs and so forth that's available. Do you just want to just elaborate? Is that available in summer for our young doctors that wants to pursue healthcare leadership?
So we find ourselves in a very unfortunate position as a profession that we actually even have colleagues today staging a sit-in Natalia and Durban because they're unemployed. So that's the difficult thing about the mismanagement of our economy today. Okay, you've got a 0.31 doctor patient ratio, but you've got doctors sitting outside of the system. So what we have done though, some of these courses are expensive. I can tell you the one in Harvard it's about just over 94,000 rands for the 4 weeks course on AI. I think MIT has got another one as well. But that's why we would like to see if we can have these being packaged as part of these guys who are now in medical school. But we have shared with our members in summer some of these courses that are offered in Taiwan, and they are in a scholarship. So if you apply and you are successful, of course, if you are a member of SAMA, we already have a memorandum of understanding or an agreement, a partnership with what would be your US aid of Taiwan. It's called ICDF. So they are the ones that are offering the scholarship. So depending on what you really want, then you can go through that, which we can share. In fact, I do think we did share it earlier this year, that you can actually choose what you want to do. They even have a year, just a year in Mandarin training, and then you can decide post that training what you want to do. We also have strong relations with the American and the Chinese Medical Association. And all of them do have some basic courses training in AI 101. I think the US is trying to take leadership, the Medical Association. They're even changing, like I said, that the A should not be artificial, it must be augmented. So there are these available for summer. And we also have just lastly, Otto, we have a memorandum of understanding with the University of Birmingham in Alabama. We've just partnered with them for a potential grant for training of doctors, especially the unemployed doctors, on AI, and we've submitted that for funding with the Health and Welfare Seat.
No, thanks, CEO.
Yeah.
That's some useful information. I see I've started a trend of questions, so hopefully you can answer them. So first question is, how does members benefit with this AI, both in private and public? There's just three questions, CEO. Can I maybe read the three of them and then you can answer them in one? So the first question is, how do members benefit with this AI in both private and public sector? The second question is, what do all the old GPs do who are technophobes? And then the last question is, what will the POPI implications be at a national health database? Is that something that you can answer, CEO?
Yeah, so let me start with the last one with the Lady Foray. I think this is why last year we had an AI in healthcare roundtable at the Huawei headquarters here in Johannesburg. We invited the ministers of health and that one of science, innovation, and technology. We had a follow-up this year. We had both the representatives from health and from science and technology. We want to bring in the ICT because this is something that must be done at national level. Once but you need a leader. You need somebody who can lead the initiative, you know, and who can bring all the stakeholders together, both public and private sector together, to say this is the first step and this is critical for everybody. So this is where the health data will be stored at national level with all the risk that exists in terms of cybersecurity and everything else that we need to put in place. Of course, we have to respect the laws of the land like POPIA, the same way we respect them now with the paper-based system, which is in fact a problem. So that part should never be a problem if we make this a national initiative. You'll be surprised, Abdul Ismail, with the technophobes who are all GPs. You'll be very surprised how many of the old doctors are actually taking this AI thing. Most of them actually have electronic medical record systems in their rooms. And I saw one old OBGY specialist who was actually conducting ward rounds in a private hospital using technology and AI. So you'll be very surprised. But I think these tools are critical for our members, whether they're in both public and private. Imagine if you were to have your booked patients already prepared, I mean, seamlessly getting their medication. So your focus is not on administrative work. You can actually use some of there's a stick that is being used already in private. You can literally talk to the stick and the stick generates as you speak to the stick, it generates a medical record for you, like a medical summary. So you don't have to go back and write. In the public sector, this would save massive amounts of time and make people to actually focus and do what they're supposed to do. Thanks, Otto.
Yeah, thanks.
Or there's one that I think I've covered all three in that response.
Yeah, I think you have. We've got 2 minutes before the next speaker, CEO. So let me just see. So how responsive has the SA government been to the engagements at either envisaged universal health information system? Do you foresee a government taking up this project? And then I see Dr. Henry Muller has made a comment here that there was, he summarized it up. He said there was actually an e-health record tender that was issued to IBM, Oracle, and I'm not sure what the other, I think it's MEDI Smart, won a tender awarded in 2007, 2008 by the Department of Health. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. And if you could maybe just speak to that, I think that tender just fell flat.
Yeah, so what is happening? I must be honest with Lungile. The government has actually warmed up, especially the Department of Science and Technology. The Dr. Bladensmande and the team there, they've warmed up to the initiative. So I must just be honest. And in the follow-up meeting that we had, the Department of Health, the minister sent a representative. I think it's Dr. Pile, and he was also enthusiastic. But what I appreciated the most was the level of honesty that we got from these two departments. That in fact, health is trying to create this. I don't know if it's related to the tender, okay, but they are working with the. I think it's I can't remember the name of this institution now, which is actually leading technological initiatives for government. But the approach that they were using, they admitted there that it was almost disease-based. So they were not looking at creating a national database, and they were also narrowly looking at just the public sector, which of course, it's important, but you really need an integration of the two systems from a health clinical data set point of view. So you need these systems to be integrated so that you can access the information regardless of where the patient has touched the health system. You are able to access the information. So there is a level of honesty, and we are hoping that a follow-up meeting with these people, because we've requested the ministries to dedicate an individual who can then work within this innovation hub that we would like to lead. So we're waiting just to confirm, and I must just say that we work with the University of the Western Cape on some of these initiatives. They are computer science department. So I just needed to mention that. Thanks, Dr. Otto.
CEO, thank you so much for your presentation and also fielding that questions. A wealth of experience can definitely be seen in the way that you answer. So all the questions has been answered. I know there was one that was just asking for the link to the scholarships or the bursaries, but I think we'll catch up on that one. Thank you so much, CEO, and thanks to the colleagues for the questions. So we now move on to our next speaker, which will cover the topic of mentorship in medicine. Dr. Nondu, you can come on the screen while I quickly go through your bio. You can start smiling. So Dr. Nondumiso, as she said, we can call her. She's the CEO and the founder of Ubuntu Doctor Coaching. So she helps doctors lead with purpose, clarity, compassion, and grounded in Ubuntu principles, empowering them to build resilient and high-performing teams. Now, this is something that we're really interested in, is the high-performing teams. It's norming, storming, and informing. That's how teams develop, but I'm sure Dr. Nondumiso will take us through this. So as a physician, leadership development, and executive coach, she brings over 20 years of extensive experience in the health sector to her coaching practice. Her background is in clinical medicine, public health, and medical affairs in diverse environments, in corporate, non-profit, and government sectors, allows her to bridge clinical expertise with leadership development, providing insights and both clinically informed and strategically sound. This unique combination enriches coaching practice, ensuring it is both relevant and impactful across various sectors. So her understanding of complexities and challenges healthcare leaders face enables her to provide tailored coaching that address real-world issues and drives meaningful change. So she does hold the MBCHB. She also holds a master's, a MSc in clinical epidemiology, and she empowers physicians to enhance their leadership skills, realign their purpose, and achieve sustainable impact. So the Ubuntu-centric coaching fosters compassionate, collaborative, and resilient leadership. And the aim is to empower both individual physician leaders, their teams, organizations, to excel in their roles, to lead with compassion, and achieve sustainable impact. I think, Dr. Nondumiso, we've got the energy from your bio, and now we're looking forward to your presentation. It's all yours. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Otel. Just to confirm that you can see the presentation and you can hear and see me well as well?
Yes, that's all.
Okay, perfect. And thank you so much also to Sama and to colleagues for the invitation to speak and to have the privilege really of talking to colleagues. Before I start, I'm learning that now in this season of my career as a coach, I have to preface my talks with an invitation to listen a bit differently from the typical type of language that we're familiar with. So as doctors, we scientists, of course, and so we're familiar with language that is rooted in data and evidence-based medicine. And that's very important. That's the work that we do. That's the work that saves lives. But it's also not the whole story of who we are. So as I do my presentation, you may hear language that is not really familiar, not necessarily sentimental, but certainly language that gives space for situations that medicine often doesn't give us the vocabulary to address. So issues like uncertainty and fatigue and meaning. So you'll hear words that, like becoming or self-limiting beliefs. These are words that are just really there to help us to become the type of doctors that medicine really needs right now, which is doctors who are resilient and also doctors who are self-aware. So I'm not asking you to forget about your scientific self, but just to bring the rest of you too into the conversation. Okay, so you're welcome, colleagues, to connect with me on social media. I always have very interesting conversations around coaching and other aspects of personal development, particularly on LinkedIn. So if you scan the QR code, it will give you a link to my contact details, and feel free to engage with me. As I said, in this current season of my career, I am a leadership development and executive coach, and I work with doctors around professional and personal development as well. The talk is about mentorship, but perhaps from a different angle. And so the type of doctor, or the doctor that will benefit, I think, from this talk is going to be one who wants to move beyond clinical excellence, but one that is really looking for a way to make impact beyond metrics, or to mentor or to lead while they themselves are also growing and evolving, and a doctor that is appreciative of the importance of values-driven and authentic connection in mentorship, and not a transactional way of engaging in mentorship. So what I will cover is really around mindset shifts, how to see the roles of within mentorship, how to create value in mentorship, how to utilize influence, and delve into mindset shifts. So I will offer some shifts that can help to strengthen mentoring relationships, but also help to reconnect with purpose. Understanding that mentorship is more than just a task or a meeting between two people. It goes further. It's relational. It's a human act. It's ubuntu, and it's a way of making sure that we support each other in a way that is authentic and is mutual, and also nourishing for all parties involved. So I'm going to start off by sharing a story, which I call a story of good intentions, which I think is helpful to root what follows. Earlier this year, I have pro bono hours that I often use to coach and to mentor. So I decided that I would identify some medical students, final year medical students, and I found about 6 of them on LinkedIn and Instagram that I was connected with, students from South Africa, from Zambia. One was from America, and invited them to be mentees, and they agreed. And then I went ahead. I designed what I think was a really good, structured program for medical students. I contacted my networks, that would be faculty from different parts of the world, doctors that I knew that would be very excited to pour into the next generation of doctors. And then I set up all the Zoom sessions and kept communicating with them, on email. And the first meeting that we had, only one student showed up. So I had to take a pause and wrote a very humble email at this time, really trying to understand what I did wrong, because I understood that there was something that was missing in this strategy. And it only took for one student to say, you've been communicating with us through email, and we don't really use email like that. We'll set up a WhatsApp group to facilitate faster email, because that's what we use. So that was the real lesson for me as a Gen X mentoring Gen Zs, is that as a mentor, a self-declared, self-appointed mentor, I'd created my own program in my image, what I thought was good for them. I hadn't asked, I didn't understand what they needed, and I didn't create the space to do that. So this really sets a very important precedence for the rest of my talk, in that true mentorship is not about impressing younger generations or other younger doctors with your credentials or what you know, or the breadth of your network. It's about humility, it's about bringing presence, and importantly, it's about co-creation. So meaning that it's not a performance, it's a partnership between the mentor and the mentee. What is quite important and maybe helpful also for the rest of the talk is just very quickly to touch on what is the mentor, what is a coach, because sometimes I have seen that they do get conflated. I think we're all familiar with a mentor, starting with any procedure that you might have done, from phlebotomy to cesarean section. You would have had an experienced guide who has some experience in that particular procedure, teach you and show you very hands-on, trust-based relationship on how to perform that procedure. A coach, on the other hand, is a facilitator. So a skilled coach is one that holds space for you to build clarity and strategy, and they focus on the mindset work that will help you to action your goals. A sponsor is a concept that I know many people often forget in their personal and their professional development. But one that can really open a lot of doors for you. These are usually people who are very influential, usually people of power who are senior, and they are able to create opportunities for you in this hierarchical relationship. We often say a sponsor will speak your name in rooms where doors will be open for you. And then finally, a therapist, of course, is, we are usually familiar with therapists. They may be a psychologist or a social worker, people that really work at the emotional level and do the important work of healing or restoring well-being. So each of these roles can support us very differently, but it is important to understand the distinction in terms of how different people might also work who hold these roles. So just to agree on a couple of things with regards to mentorship, and I'm going to, talk about this particular study that was conducted around the benefit of mentorship, so that we're all on the same page as to why we're even having a conversation about mentorship and its importance. So in this study, which was conducted amongst non-academic mid-career hospitalist physicians, they essentially compared various outcomes between doctors who had received mentorship and those who had not received mentorship. And what was very obvious was that doctors who had received mentorship reported lower levels of burnout and lower levels of emotional exhaustion. Doctors who received mentorship also reported improved job satisfaction. They were more committed to the organization. There was more fulfillment, and hence career retention in the role, meaning that it reduced the turnover as well because there was long-term engagement. Doctors who received mentorship also indirectly had patients who reported better patient satisfaction and care. And so meaning that the impact or the benefit of mentorship extended beyond the individual doctor, but also to the organization as well as to the patient. Mentorship was also found to expand the doctor's identity in a way that it opened them up to a greater purpose. It improved their resilience, but they also were able to see other opportunities in leadership in areas such as education, advocacy, administration, and health policy beyond their clinical duties. So meaning that mentorship is conclusively, in this study at least, very important and significantly associated with improvement in physician well-being, career satisfaction, and leadership development beyond the individual doctor. But before we get to that, there's something that we do need to talk about that is important to ensure that when we design our programs, our mentorship programs, we maximize the benefit, and that is the issue of mindset shifts. So I'm going to address mindset shifts from two perspectives: one around the mentee, and secondly around the mentor. So that as both parties engage in mentorship programs, they are adequately prepared and they are ready to realize the potential of mentorship. Now, we often assume, as I did, that early career doctors, those that might be interested in leadership, they want mentorship. But we also know that there are many doctors that don't reach out for leadership or mentorship opportunities, even when they are offered. And it's important to not assume that it's because they lack ambition, as I might have assumed that maybe they lack ambition. They're not really keen to be led. But we have to acknowledge that there are sometimes these internalized beliefs, which may be shaped by the medical culture, the hierarchy of medical culture, and some human factors too, such as self-doubt and fear. And so these internal narratives, which are often unspoken, can also shape not only how mentorship is sought, but how the mentorship or the quality of the mentorship relationship looks. So I'm going to just go through three self-limiting beliefs that are commonly held and that may hold a mentee back. So for example, they might say, if I reach out for mentorship, or if I acknowledge that I need mentorship, I'll be seen as weak or unprepared or incompetent. So this is a belief that is sometimes rooted in what we value in medicine, which is self-sufficiency. We often see being independent as a strength. And so vulnerability becomes or feels a bit risky. The result is that even when there are mentors, there will be questions that will go unasked because people don't want to be seen as weak or incompetent or unprepared. And the learning then becomes delayed because no clarity is sought, and then the connection can be lost. Another self-limiting belief would be only high potential people get mentors, and maybe I don't qualify. So meaning that I must prove myself before I deserve a mentor. So again, our hierarchy in medicine may possibly be contributing to that. The result is that those that feel that they are average, maybe that they are not seen or visible, don't seek the support through mentorship, and potentially those are the people that don't get the opportunity to realize that they too may be high potential individuals, but hold back because they have not had the opportunity to demonstrate that they are high potential people. And then finally, you may have a mindset that says, I've done it, alone this far. I've been through so much, and I've gotten this far without anybody's help. So, why change that now? If it's not broken, why fix it? So this is, again, I think, a mindset that we value in medicine. Independence is highly sought after. You want to be the type of person that is able to thrive, as an independent doctor. But that is a culture that can sometimes also stunt our growth, because when we feel that we are resilient and we are attuned to our own strengths, we can also develop certain blind spots. We don't know what we don't know. And so this is, again, another mindset that can lead a mentee not to seek mentorship, or if they are in a mentorship relationship, not really be receptive to learning and to growth very easily. Now, coming to the mentors, you have other different types of self-limiting beliefs, but one that is prevalent would be, I don't have enough to offer, right? Now, this is something that I know within the medical community, we don't really prize self-promotion. I think the medical culture doesn't like people who are prideful or boastful, and that's how it may come across to some people. And people may think that in order to become a mentor, you need to have done a certificate course and, have some other objective metric or credential to be a mentor. But the mindset we need to remind ourselves of is that, it's possible to mentor exactly where you are. And the effect is that when we think we don't have anything to offer, it means there is some mentee somewhere that is missing out on our lived experience and what we know. Another self-limiting belief is, of course, around time, acknowledging, yes, doctors are very, very busy, but sometimes it is an excuse that, it's just another task. I don't have time to mentor people. And what happens with that mindset is that we close off creative ways of mentorship. Mentorship comes in many different formats. It can be virtual. It can be, you can have speed mentorship where you can have multiple mentors. You can have group mentorship. There are many, many creative ways of mentoring people. And so when you use time to block off taking the first step towards mentorship or being a mentor, then it means, again, that there are missed opportunities for meaningful support, even if that support is brief. And then the final mindset shift is assuming that as a mentor, you have to have all the answers. This, again, is in our medical culture, speaks to perfectionism, where you do not want to be exposed. You would rather go and study, and feel that you have to know everything. And then it becomes a performance, right? As I assumed I have all the answers, I know exactly what all these medical students need. And that was not rooted in connection, it's not rooted in service. In mentorship, there has to be an opportunity for vulnerability for you as a mentor also to grow. Vulnerability in understanding that you're not going to know everything. I completely didn't understand that Gen Zs don't do emails like that. They want TikTok and different ways of connecting. So that is the challenge that comes with wanting to have all the answer. So in short, we have to reframe mentorship as a shared growth. It's not perfection, it's not prestige, it's not performance. It really is about presence. And so when we challenge these internal narratives, then when the mentee and the mentor get together in a mentorship relationship, they are making room for a more relational and a reciprocal mentorship. Now, I want to talk about how do you then move, this mindset? How do you move to the next level? What is the transformation that can happen? Colleagues, I want to offer that you are the CEO of your life. You have to, and I'm speaking as a coach, you have to see your career as something that you lead. It's not something that happens to you. Despite everything that is happening externally, there are no posts, there's no funding, there's a war, there's this and that and the other. That is outside of your control. What you do have control of is yourself. And so with a mindset shift, you are then required to take ownership and be intentional with how you show up for yourself so that you can be the mentor or the mentee that positively affects the mentorship relationship. So there's some 3 steps that I'd like to share that might be helpful. The first is to move from self-doubt to self-leadership. So in other words, moving from, I should know this, or asking for help is a weakness, to really leading yourself. Notice your emotions. Notice and name the hesitant parts of you with curiosity. Why do I get nervous when I think about asking for help or expressing my interest in getting mentored in AI? And perhaps is it because I feel I might be rejected, or there's shame or guilt, or will I be judged in my request? So name those emotions, be curious about them, and then move forward from there. So the second step would be then to move from these automatic thoughts or these self-limiting beliefs to more empowered thinking. And that takes reframing. Reframing meaning when you might have words or phrases or thoughts rather that say, I'm not leadership material, or mentors are too busy, and you reframe that because you are the CEO of you and you understand that thoughts are not facts. So you challenge that. If I say I'm too busy, am I really too busy? Do I need to take an audit of my time? Perhaps there is time that I can find during the day to be a mentor. And so reframe even some of those phrases and think of it as, asking for help or asking for mentorship is being strategic. It's an investment in my long-term goals, even if it feels uncomfortable. And then lastly, to move from an externalized identity to ownership, where you are going to be claiming agency as for your career. Instead of waiting to be chosen, you can choose also to engage. You can own your own needs as a mentee. This is what I want from a mentor. This is what I want for my goals. And then identify the right mentor for you accordingly. So owning your needs and then taking initiative on those needs and your wants and your demands. That's part of empowering yourself to be the CEO of you. So as a CEO, you are setting the vision and the culture for yourself and for your identity. You are allocating your resources, including the time, the energy, and you are driving the strategy, taking accountability for it, and taking proactive steps in stewarding your brand as a doctor. So meaning now you can get into a place where you start choosing the type and the structure of mentorship that you want to participate in. Now, we all know that CEOs have a team. So you are going to assemble your personal board of directors. This is what I want to offer, a personal board of directors. In that personal board of directors, you can have any number of people. It is up to you where you are in your career to choose who you want. This is just an example. You can have a coach, you can have a sponsor, you can even have your peers. You can have people called connectors. These are people who have broad networks that just know how to pull people together very quickly. People that know everybody. That's what a connector does. You can have spiritual support, and you can have multiple mentors. It doesn't mean that you are confined to having one mentor. So there is the concept of mosaic mentorship, where you might have, for example, a mentor or a reverse mentor, which is essentially what the medical students did to me. They are mentoring me in how to mentor, in an intergenerational, multi-generational setting. You can have mentors that are around one specific skill. You can have mentors that are outside of the medical profession. If you're wanting for perhaps corporate strategy, you might want to draw on people that are in corporate but have a legal or financial or some other expertise, or even IT or tech expertise. You can have any number of mentors. So this is how you then gather your team around you so that you foster agency, adaptability, and you're able to thrive in a complex environment. So where do I start? And this is really just a summary of the talk that I've just made. I always say to doctors, it's important for us to learn how to get out of our own way. And there are three ways that you can do that. One is to reflect, is to reframe, and to reclaim. What does that mean? So firstly, reflecting means, looking deeply at your own current situation and your needs. What are your goals? Understand the type of mentorship that you want and what will truly help you to grow. Reframing really speaks to the mindset that we talked about earlier, and to see mentorship as a mutual partnership that should be serving both individuals, the mentee and the mentor, to build the strength rather than exposing each other's weakness. So people often talk about the scarcity and abundance mindset. So the invitation here is to come with an abundance mindset. Seeking mentorship does not mean that you are broken or there is a deficit in you, no, but it is about building the strengths that you have and working on other opportunities to grow as an individual. And then finally, to reclaim your agency by being able to set clear expectations, take responsibility for your own development so that you can create an outcome in mentorship that serves you, whether you are the mentor or the mentee. And then I'm going to end with this final slide, which is a quote that I think most people would have seen this quote, which says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So my argument here is that before we seek mentorship, we have to prepare ourselves. Mentorship is an important relationship that can shape your career. It can open your doors, and it can sustain you through all these challenges of medicine and all these dynamic happenings. But too often we just think about it as just a meeting schedule. It's an activity that the department has funded. And it's just about asking for advice. But in reality, it's very dynamic, it's reciprocal, and it depends less on the structure of the mentorship and more on the mindset of the people that are involved. So it's not only about what we do, but how we also show up, not only for ourselves, but also for each other. Yeah. And I'll stop there. Thank you, Dr. Otel.
Wow, Dr. Ndumiso, that was sure. I feel motivated just listening to you. I was glued to the screen. I've got so many questions for you, but I'll allow the colleagues to first go for it. But thank you so much for a really impressive talk. So let's just see. There's nothing in the Q&A, or am I misreading? Let's see. No, there is really no questions. That's on that one. And let's just see in the chat. All right. Nothing in the chat. Okay, I think you've answered. Maybe I should just start with one question and just see what comes up from the colleagues. I like your last statement, where you said when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, because I wanted to ask. So we always look at. You mentioned the benefits of mentorship, and and we're speaking about shaping our leaders for healthcare for the future. But I was just thinking, what were the roles and the responsibilities, sort of mentees? Because I'm not sure how much mentors and coaches are still around. I mean, we are under serious pressure in the state sector. I mean, the workloads has just increased, demands from patients. So, what do you find in your experience? Are there still coaches and mentors around? And you know, how should mentees behave? If I can sort of put it in that way.
Yes, the answer is there are coaches and mentors around. And I'm going to argue that a lot of people are probably mentoring, but they don't consider themselves
Mm,
to be mentors because they are not intentional in thinking about mentorship. So perhaps this is an opportunity for people to reflect, that time that you spend over lunch or just, informally with a colleague, advising them. Could that be potentially mentorship? How could you grow from there, to really come fully into the mentorship role? So yeah, I'm going to argue that there are mentors and there are coaches, but they probably don't consider themselves to be so. The second question, I think, is also very important in terms of how mentees should behave. You know, being a mentee is and having a mentor, given the time constraints that you said, should really be taken as a privilege.
mm,
But again, the mindset shift is that don't send an email to Dr. Randall and say, please mentor me. Question is in what, right?
mm,
So the mindset shift is, I am a mentee. I've spent time deciding what my needs are. I know what direction I want, so that when I approach Dr. Randall, I'm very clear what the demand will be on his time. And my ask is very clear. And I know that Dr. Randall will serve me for this function, and Dr. Mbali for this function. So really, for me, what I think is the very first and critical step is to be clear, what do you want as a mentee, and then find the mentors that will help you with that. And it could be multiple people at the same time as well. That is always very, very helpful, rather than just saying, yeah, I want to be mentored. It doesn't help the mentor.
yeah. No, thanks, Dr. Nondumiso. I see there's still no questions, and I take it that everything is crystal clear. So I wanted to tell a joke, but I mean, I'm mindful of time. So I presented once at hospital, and I asked people to scan the QR code, and some people were taking pictures of the QR code instead of scanning it. So I hope nobody missed your QR code, because that would have taken them directly to your pages. And I'm sure you're available for coaching. So, Dr. Nondumiso, once again, thank you so much. Let me release you, and then move on with the program. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, colleagues. So we are just about 3 minutes over time, but I'm sure we'll make it up. Our next talk will be on mindful living for your wellness. And we've got the honor to have Dr. Shabalala that will present. Dr. Shabalala, you could probably come on screen in the meantime, um, so that when I do just address your bio, people know who I'm talking to or talking about. Okay, there we go. So that's Sija. Welcome. And I just wanted to say the participants has increased. So maybe they knew the CEO was first up and that Dr. Nondumiso was second. We had 291 participants. So hopefully during your talk we'll be up to 300. So Dr. Shabalala is a seasoned medical practitioner in psychiatry and general medicine and emergency medicine, and she brings an extensive expertise in her role. So she works both. She's a medical officer in Ireland at the moment, and working in the child and the adolescent unit, and she manages very complex psychiatry cases, and that further inspires a passion for psychiatry and a multidisciplinary team approach. So what stands out for me, Dr. Shabalala, of your aspirations is that you are preparing to do your part ones in psychiatry with the College of Medicine of South Africa. I'm not sure if that's done already or if you're writing in the second semester, but if you must still write, all the best there with your preparations. So Dr. Shabalala has a 100-page CV, which I had to summarize into one page. And all I'll say is she's got extensive experience. She's currently a medical officer in Ireland, looking to do her primaries or part ones in psychiatry in South Africa, and then to contribute to the psychiatric landscape in South Africa. Dr. Shabalala, it's my honor to introduce you, and it's over to you.
Good evening, colleagues, and thank you so much for the invite. Yes, we are going to be doing our mindfulness presentation. So I know it's been a long day. Everyone has been busy. So we can start with a 5 minutes break, which is breathing mindfulness. So I'll start with it and then I'll continue with the meditation so that we are mindful and not just say mindfulness, it's just breathing. Then we'll go through the presentation. So we can relax and close our eyes and start with our meditation. To simply be and to look within yourself with mindful and calmness. Allow yourself to switch from usual mode of doing to a mode of not doing, of simply being, sitting in an erect posture on a straight back chair as you allow your body to become still. Bring your attention to the fact that you are breathing and become aware of the movement of your breath as it comes into your body and as it leaves your body. Not manipulating the breath in any way or trying to change it. Simply being aware of it and of the feelings associated with the breathing and observing the breath deep down in your belly. Feeling the abdomen as it expands gently on the in-breath and as it falls back towards your spine on the out-breath. Being totally here in each moment with each breath, not trying to do anything. Simply being with your breath, giving full care and attention to each in-breath and to each out-breath as they follow one another in the never-ending cycle and flow. When you notice that your attention is no longer here and no longer with your breathing, without judging yourself, bring your attention back to your breathing and ride the waves of your breathing. Using your breath as an anchor to focus your attention, to bring back to the present. Whenever you notice that your mind is becoming absorbed or reactive, feeling your body from the head to toe and becoming aware of all the sensation in your body. So that now you are observing not only the flow of breath, but the senses of your body as a whole. being here with whatever feelings and sensation comes up in any moment without judging them, without reacting to them, just being fully here, fully aware, totally present with whenever your feelings are, and with your breath and senses of your body as a whole, moment to moment, being fully present, full with yourself, re-establishing your awareness on the body as a whole and on the breath as it moves in and out of your body. Coming back to a sense of fullness of each in-breath and the fullness of each out-breath. Just being with your breathing from moment to moment. Just sitting in stillness, looking for nothing and being present to all. Just as it is, just as it unfolds, just being right here, right now, complete, human, whole. As the practice comes to an end, you might give yourself credit for having spent this time nourishing yourself in a deep way by dwelling in this state of non-doing, in this state of being, for having intentionally made time for yourself to simply be who you are. As you move back into the world, allow the benefit of this practice to expand into every aspect of your life. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the moment. Open your eyes.
Thank you. We can continue. In this busy life that we're in as doctors and in the world and all the pressures that we experience, we deny ourselves time to be mindful of things. We do things automatically. So mindfulness, it's part of it's neuroscience, because it's still new. It started by John Kabat-Zinn in about 1965, that it was shown that it reduces some stress in some patients, but with time, everything that was developing, it showed that it had more impact holistically, from stress to kind of patient with physical illnesses and different presentation, pain. So it was practice even improving functioning. So mindfulness, it's when you pay attention and awareness to the present moment, not being judgmental, but just as you are, and while you engaging and experiencing life. So in our busy life, we deny ourselves that opportunity to experience life because we live in a so fast-paced life and we miss out on so many things. So yes, it is sometimes difficult. People will think, oh, I don't have time. I think Dr. Nondumiso has laid a nice background saying everything, how the medical field and all the hierarchy has tend us to be busy and focus in everything, that sometimes we forget ourselves, we forget to take care of self. So the mindfulness intend for any individual to be fully aware. So there are different forms of mindfulness. You can do it formally, where you do the meditations and yoga practices, different form of formal meditation. But we know that when you were busy, you can always do informal mindfulness. like mindful walking. You can go outside during lunch in Ireland. Even in some of the offices, we have showers. So during lunch, because it's also cold and our sun, the hottest day in midsummer last year, it was like 21 degrees. It was hottest day. Everyone is sweating and saying it's hot. So we go for a walk and you get stimulated and you appreciate the nature, and that it's very good for our own system. And we can also do certain things. It's not only walking, but things that you do, but paying attention in everything. Small thing like sitting in it, enjoying your shower, you engage all your senses as much as possible. And everyone in life has more dominant senses. You need to understand yourself and know. I know myself, like I'm very kinesthetic, like Virgo, it's stand for visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, and olfactory. So sometimes as human beings, some of our senses are more dominant than others, but we were created to use all the senses, and that enhances the stability, your calmness, and the development of some neural networks in your brain. So it is important to be mindful in everything that you're doing. We've said that thoughts are not facts, but we know that we have wandering mind. Every time you sit, your mind is working, you don't rest, it's busy. Research has shown that you at least have about 60,000 thoughts a day, and we engage in very helpful thinking styles like I'm not good enough, catastrophizing certain things, and also sometimes autopilot. Autopilot is good, but when you dwell on it, it can cause and create a pattern also that you lose in enjoying yourself, being mindful of certain things. And also because of you being in autopilot, you can tune in to certain thoughts and certain things that you don't intend to think about naturally, but you just go there and stay there. So it is very important to identify that and maintain it and manage it by being mindful. And also we know that our brains tend to have negative bias. Like you will do so many good things in life, but one thing will happen, then you'll dwell on it. Oh, I'm not doing well. Or maybe your boss says something. The whole day you'll be stuck on that negative thing, and that will have unhealthy impact on your life. As we know that even if we say, oh, I'm deciding to do something in life, but subconscious mind controls our behavior because of the thing that you learn from childhood and from everything. So that has a very impact in your life, and that will have your behavior being determined by you being mindful. And with neuroscience, when we in med school or previously, we used to say the brains has stopped growing, but now neuroscience has shown that there is continuous neuroplasticity, which was supported by various studies. This was shown by fMRI scan, saying after 6 weeks of mindful practice, there's been a brain changes that's been observed. Like they've seen the change in the cortex, the thickness of the cortex. The CEO was presenting, was showing the neurons and everything. So that is now the CEO of you as a human being, where your decision has been taken, the judgment, the attention, your inhibition, your personality has been ethical personality in your prefrontal cortex, and also the hippocampus, and where your memory and it's being consolidated, the learning is taking place. And so it is very important as well. When you're practicing mindfulness, it has been shown that those brain structures change continuously. So there's neurogenesis in a different way where the changes that's ongoing. So it is possible to change the behavior by being mindful, because when you're mindful, you are concentrating in what you are doing now. So denying that negative thoughts and everything. So as we know that if anything that you don't support, or the muscle that you don't exercise, it atrophies. So even with the negative thoughts and everything, you acknowledge the thoughts and gentle, you correct yourself and you bring your brain back to being present so that you enjoy the presence. We have the foundations of mindfulness, the pillars, where you apply certain pillars, like you look at into life like beginner's mind, like a child. The child doesn't know this will be dangerous. They take every day as it comes. So because of our pre-programmed subconscious mind, we limit ourselves in doing things. When you're practicing mindfulness, you have to live non-judgmentally. You have accept anything and let go and have trust. You choose what will work for you to live mindfully. You also have to have your gratitude journal if it's possible. You look at your positive timelines. You can even visualize. Those will help in terms of putting positive part. As we've said, our mind tend to be negatively biased. So you put more on your positive account. And also, as doctors, we've been trained and we have practice to be less self-compassionate. We are more compassionate for our patients, for families, and completely forget about ourselves. I think also it came again that the hierarchy and being in need of being a tough cookie to survive medical school. But on mindfulness, it teaches us to practice self-care, to being less judgmental about ourselves, and also being kind of to other people also helps to put that positiveness in ourselves. And as we go to the limbic system, we know that with mindfulness, as we've said, the hippocampus that we talked about, and it's connected, it's part of the limbic system, connected to the prefrontal cortex, where our decision-making are being made. So the limbic system has a connection through the thalamus, if you remember our med school, hypothalamus, to have impact on our motivation and drive, which is our reward system, which is one of part of involved in terms of substance abuse. And also it helps in regulation our emotions. We've covered the learning and memory, our feeding behaviors, and sexual behaviors. The research has shown that if you practice mindfulness, this contributes an important role, and then you become more stable, and your autonomic nervous system being affected by part of your hypothalamus, it becomes more regulated. So it is part of being mindful. This is just structure of the limbic system that we've seen previously, with the hippocampus and our amygdala, which is our fear center. So when you're mindful, you desensitize it slowly to whatever previous exposure to a fear stimulus. And it is also practical to be used in the patient with post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, because when your autonomic nervous system is more stable, more controlled, so it doesn't get overstimulated. And also we unlearn by focusing at the present moment. We unlearn our fear behavior or the stimuli slowly, as the analog of walking on the path of when there's grass and you walk on that path. When you walk, like when you remember and then thinking about that incident, then you can get that grasp, the path becomes more clear and clear. That is like an analog of your network in your brain. So when you stop walking on that path, meaning you're mindful, you're paying attention at the present moment, you are like stopping walking on that grass. So the grass will grow again, which means the fear will, or the depression or that worrying thought will get away. So that's how the present moment is important. With part of the limbic system, we have our dopaminergic system, which is the mesolimbic pathway, which, like I've said, it's a CEO of our lives and everything, and also based on the part of substance abuse, which gets into our behaviors. That cup of coffee in the morning that says, stimulate the dopamine release in our system, and that gives us a kick. So in terms of managing that and being stable, managing your limbic system, managing addictive behavior, is a pleasurable activities. It stimulates us. So as doctors, we know that we have high prevalence of different substance abuse among our colleagues because of the pressures, the coping, from the society, from ourselves, pushing ourselves, the families. So the whole system put our doctors in high pressure. So we have to find a way of sustaining ourselves, being able to continue doing things, and we end up being able using more substances. And I've just mentioned a few of the substances that we are prone to use and the easy access as doctors. It's easier to get more substances and use it. And we know that now there's a high use of Ritalin among medical students and students as a whole, as part of substance abuse, trying to cope, trying to perform better because of the advantages that is being given by the dopamine system, which is part of our limbic system, is the main neurotransmitter in our limbic system, which the mindfulness assists in terms of the regulation. So it is very important to practice it, and because it has shown that mindfulness, except increasing the dopamine, which is a relevant neurotransmitter, it also potentially increase the receptor sensitivity and modulate the dopamine, because if we don't want it overstimulated, as we know that if it's increased, it is the hypothesis in the schizophrenia, when it's also not enough, it causes some problem like different symptoms. And I've also done some benefits of mindfulness in different aspects, combining the mental part of it and the physiological part of the benefit of mindfulness. Initially, it was started like for stress reduction, but it has shown that it can do some emotional regulation that we normally apply in the teenagers in Ireland, but to assist those teenagers struggling with emotional regulation to regulate. And also in our society, it can be beneficial, especially of economic challenges and accessibility in terms of children with ADHD. It's one of the behavioral methods that it can be applied to try and stimulate, because we know that from our background, neurotransmitters that are involved in terms of ADHD, they need the dopamine shortage, all the balance and everything. So applying some of the measures that we can teach to our patients to assist them to assist their children. It's one of the useful ways of doing, even in eating disorders, because it's also linked to certain dysregulation and medically well as well, coping mechanism, in decreasing cortisol levels in ourselves. So it is a combination of both the psychological impact and the physical impact. Again, we said we need to be a good gardener. We water what we need and not water the weed. So being mindful assists us in doing that we gentle guide our mind intentionally to be mindful in what we're thinking about, in what we're paying attention to. By doing that, we are reinforcing our connections, our positive connections, and building that neural network that assists us. So as we have said, we atrophy the behavior that we don't need by not paying attention intentionally to it. So it is our responsibility to take an ongoing decision and discipline to spend as much time as possible in life, to live and enjoy the present moment, to be deep in life. It is the only place where we want to be. Everything that you ever want, it's not to live in your thought, but to live in this world and enjoy it. So they said the real self is covered on the clouds, but we need to be mindful every day in our lives in what we are doing intentionally as a choice. So I hope with that, we'll be able, it's still a new thing. In Ireland, it's now incorporated in the curriculum at schools, and the schools are paying. Sometimes they will pay half to it, or sometimes the school will just pay, and they are trying to employ mindfulness from the childhood, so that as teenagers, we know that at the teenage level is where the pruning and everything, neurogenesis, and it's shaping and pruning. So they trying to make it as effective as possible at an early age to enjoy the advantages of mindfulness. It's still a new science. We still need to practice it, and we feel like it's far-fetched and everything. I know as the training in med school, it doesn't feel like, but I've personally used it on my own journey in life, and I've experienced, I used to be very anxious, but the medication didn't work for me, so I practice mindfulness. Unfortunately, it's dose dependent. The more you practice it, the more you feel the difference, the more you feel calm. So thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shabalala. That mindfulness session was really well needed. You can imagine my stress knowing that I needed to conduct this session this evening and to facilitate it. I didn't sleep last night. That's how nervous I was. But thank you so much, and thank you for just, you said something which was quite profound. Is we must you must go from a mode of doing to a mode of non-doing. But I mean, that is obviously being mindful. And a good gardener doesn't water weeds, it waters the garden. So that's something that I took from there. And just by the round of applause, I can see that the colleagues truly enjoyed it. I'm not sure if there's any questions. There is a question that is in the chat, which is sort of more holistic and general, which I think is a very important question, and I knew that question was going to come up tonight. I don't see any other questions, so let me go to that one. I don't know, Dr. Shabalala, you're probably still in Ireland, but I don't know if you heard of that. There was a young doctor that recently died in KZN. And we believe it was through illness and diabetic complications and so forth. And there's just a question in the chat as to how is this being addressed by Summer and the HPCSA. So I'm not sure if you know anything about the case, Dr. Shabalala, or if you want to pass it to any of our other panelists.
Yes, I've heard about the case, and I've read actually about it and what happened around it. But in terms of how it's being handled, I think I didn't follow it up because, as I've said, I'm preparing to write part 1 exams.
Yes.
Like on the 21st of July. So I'm trying to be more focused. So yeah. I can
Thank you
ask
so much.
one of the maybe the CEO, the doctor CEO to maybe, or anyone to address and answer
that question. No, good. So, Dr. Lazarus, we will get to that question for you. And I think that question obviously needs a well-rounded answer from Summer. I don't think there's anybody on the call tonight representing the HPCSA. So I will try and get hold of the CEO to answer that question for you. So that one's on me. So, colleagues, is there any other questions for Dr. Shabalala? Let me just go to the chat again. So Dr. Lazarus, we will answer your question before the end of this evening, or we'll get some direction as to where we're going. So Dr. Shabalala, once again, thank you so much. We can see your passion, and we have no doubt that you'll be mindful while you are studying for your Part 1's exams.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the session. Right, so colleagues, our last speaker for this evening brings a very topical, if I can say, topic. So we will be speaking about and trying to understand and managing of substance abuse in healthcare settings. So this talk will be done by Dr. Leila Parak. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. She's been a private psychiatrist while practicing private since 2013. She's got a wealth of experience. She's board members and exco members of very astute organizations, which will be a tongue twister for me tonight. I must admit that, Dr. Parak. So if you don't mind, I will just summarize it as that, as to say you bring a wealth of experience in the psychiatry space, over 10 years of private experience, and she's also registered in Ireland, with the Irish Medical Council. So there's something happening in Ireland that we don't know. I hope it's not the Irish whiskey. But without further ado, Dr. Leila, you can take us into your talk. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. The one area that I'm not so expert is screen sharing, but I'm going to do my best. I did have some coaching earlier. There we go. Okay, I hope everybody can see this.
Not yet. Yeah, we can see it now. Just full screen it, Dr. Baruch, then it's fine. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. I'm sorry, it just went all the way to the back, so I'm going to start at the top. Yes. My topic tonight is about understanding and managing substance abuse in a healthcare setting. And it's quite a weighty topic for the last talk of the evening. So I'm going to try and keep it as, give it the respect it's due, but as light as possible. So yes, I've been working in addiction work since I graduated as a specialist, and part of that is the Zamani Dual Diagnosis Clinic at Baragwanath Hospital, which runs every Wednesday morning, and that's where most of my addiction work comes in. So I wanted to start off with a common saying known to all of us from the Bible, where the physician is guided to heal thyself. And why addiction and substance abuse matters in our field is because, of the obvious, where patient safety is at risk when practitioners are impaired. And then it's about our professional integrity, and then also about the public's trust in our system. So we need to maintain and uphold standards so that patients can trust the system and the service that we provide. So in terms of the background, the global estimates are that 10 to 15% of healthcare workers misuse substances. There's many contributing factors, and I think some of it, has been addressed. Sorry, is my screen still sharing?
Yes, we can still see. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just not able to see it. Okay, there we go. And so the contributing factors are that it is a very high stress environment that we often work in. We're at the coalface of life and death, and whether that is in a psychiatric setting or in an emergency room setting, the stresses are different, but still numerous. Doctors work long hours, and of course, there's the easy access to substances. In South Africa, the concern is that there has been shown an increasing prevalence both in the medical student sector as well as in qualified doctors. So, because I was the last talk of the evening and I thought that listeners would be very tired, I thought to keep the statistics quite low. However, interestingly, there's been quite a lot of work done in this field and very up-to-date work. So there's a review from 2025 in May this year called Behind the White Coat, the Effects of Substance Use and Alcohol Among South African Medical Students. And this was a review of many different articles, and what they found was that 42% of South African medical students engage in binge drinking activities, 38% in cannabis use, leading to, indirectly and directly, an anxiety prevalence of 48% and a depression prevalence of 53%. Now, I think it's because my private practice is located quite close to universities and centers of learning, but I do treat a large cohort of medical students and doctors, and these numbers are reflected in my personal practice as well. So I can see some of the chat people are surprised at these numbers, but I'm not at all surprised. So, I didn't mean to pick out the anaesthetists at all. It's just that this was the most robust work that I could find amongst medical specialties. And this is a 2019 article in the South African Journal of Anesthesia. And 92% of they call them people who practice anesthetics because it includes, various levels of anesthetic kind of training. 92% of people who practice anesthesia use alcohol in their lifetime. However, 12% of those show a moderate risk to an alcohol use disorder. 35% of anesthetists use cannabis, 34% sedatives, 42% tobacco. So this was a questionnaire-based study which only had a 20.9% response rate. So the study suggests that the more severe users were probably less likely to have filled out the questionnaire, which means that these numbers are probably low. And the article is called The Prevalence of Substance Use in Anesthesia Practitioners in South Africa. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of what kind of numbers are out there. And as I said, it's actually a fairly well-researched field and fairly up-to-date as well. So in a South African context, what are our risk factors in our profession? And we all know about the high workload and the burnout. And added to that is what I like to think of as moral injury, where we often working in resource poor settings, and we often having to make very difficult decisions morally because of the lack of resources. And that contributes to burnout. And then that leads to seeking solace in various substances. Then there's the typical stigma around seeking help, and this is definitely not, only in a South African context. I think around the world, the stigma from a medical profession around seeking help, physician, we don't heal ourselves. The easy access to pharmaceuticals, as I said, and there certainly is a mental health stigma in our profession. And as I say, in my private work, I see that all the time. So I wanted to go back to what is the definition of an impairment, because as psychiatrists, we often called upon to assess impairment in our colleagues and comment on impairment, but I think it's something that all medical professionals should be fluid with and conversant with so that we can make the right choices when it comes to our colleagues and ourselves. So it's a condition that affects your professional functioning. And it can include substance use, psychiatric illness, or cognitive decline. And what I feel is important to know is that it's a regulatory kind of decision, not, and we need to kind of keep it away from a moral judgment. So in terms of our ethical and legal duties to report, there is the Health Professions Council Rule 25 and 26, which makes it mandatory upon each of us to report ourselves or our colleagues if reasonably suspected, and failure to report is a breach of the code. Now, personally, in my practice, I strongly recommend patients to self-report because I feel that it puts them on the front foot. And even when it comes to addiction, it's a show of good faith to the Health Professions Council. And in all my experience with helping patients to self-report and the interactions with the council, it has worked out in the patient's favor or in the doctor's favor, the doctor being the patient, because the council is regulatory and not judgmental. And provides a nice oversight on the patient and just make sure that they're getting the help they need and they're staying in help. So I do feel like, while it's an ethical duty to self-report or report a colleague, I feel it also helps with adherence and remaining in treatment because you know that there's an oversight body making sure that you are adhering to treatment. So the process is that you submit a report, which you are able to find on the HPCSA website. You can do it anonymously or via the workplace, but as I say, I usually strongly recommend that patients self-report. And then there is a committee that sits at the Health Professions Council, which is only to do with the impaired practitioner. And then the committee decides what they need to do, whether they need to evaluate by an independent doctor or whether they need to just keep the patient, in their field and in their kind of watch, or suspension if necessary. Back to my personal practice, and even at Barra, often we get doctors from other departments referred to our clinic, our addiction clinic, for assistance with their substance misuse. I have yet to come across a patient or a doctor who is a patient suspended when they self-report. So the barriers to reporting are pretty obvious. We do, because we're in the trenches and we're working at the cold face of such difficult resources, there is a sense of camaraderie and reporting a colleague feels like you're going to be harming their career. But I can tell you in my personal experience, reporting and getting help that you need, it can only help in the medium to long term. And then there are concerns over retaliation or isolation, but I think that's why the Health Professions Council has that anonymous way of reporting. And then I think it's about people not knowing enough in terms of how to report yourself or a colleague for an impairment. And then the uncertainty about what your responsibility is, whether you're a superior, whether you're a colleague, whether you're a teacher, or the patient themselves. So in terms of the SAMA and the Health Professions Council guidelines, SAMA supports the early and confidential intervention, whether it's from your department or from your colleagues. The SAMA advises the patient to consult with indemnifiers for legal protection, and SAMA strongly encourages the Health Professions Council to have a supportive, non-punitive approach. And as I say, in my experience with the committee, I have found them to be supportive and non-punitive and fair. And I think, I'm not so sure who makes up the committee, but I do believe that it is a multidisciplinary team of doctors from different specialties. So that's the reporting side and the kind of indemnity and the legal side. But how do we help our colleagues in terms of treatment? So there's the public sector, and there are a surprising number of our colleagues who are not able to enter the private sector for healthcare. So there are provincial detox and rehab units. These are limited but available. And there have been, certainly in Gauteng, there have been a proliferation of rehab and detox units under the Department of Social Development. And as I say, we get doctors being referred to our clinic from other parts of the hospital, and that's in a public sector. And then in a private sector, there are inpatient and outpatient rehab centers. There is paperwork involved in terms of getting the doctor temporarily incapacitated for a rehabilitation. And then you have to think about getting the patient into multidisciplinary care. So it's very, very rare that you get a patient with an addiction problem without an underlying psychiatric driver. And so if you're treating the addiction without managing the underlying psychiatric condition, you're not going to get anywhere. So it requires identification of the addiction, identification of the psychiatric problem, and then treating both in a parallel manner. And then it's about the psychology that needs to happen in parallel, as well as occupational therapy in terms of reintegration and work preparation. And then there are, options of opioid substitution and stuff, but that comes in with the multidisciplinary care. So ideally, in an ideal world, what we would really like to see is a specialized program for healthcare workers who are abusing substances, where they can be assured that their program is going to be confidential, where their return to practice plan has been tailored for them, where they agree with a monitoring agreement with their employer or with their occupational therapist, who then communicates to the employer, and then psychological support for relapse prevention. This doesn't exist to my knowledge in South Africa, but as I say, this would be wonderful in an ideal world. So how this would work in terms of how to manage this as an employer of a doctor, you identify the problem, whether it's an addiction or a psychiatric problem or a cognitive disorder, and then you report it to the Health Professions Council as an impaired physician. The health committee reviews it, they refer for treatment, and ideally the goal is always to keep this flowchart moving, in one direction, and that direction is to get the patient back working and back functioning for the thing that they spent many, many years studying for. What to make sure you do is to intervene early, maintain the confidentiality, and I think also the dignity and the respect, because this is a colleague and a patient. And so it's about managing that line. It's a tricky line, but it's about managing it sensitively and with dignity, and ensuring that the patient is safe at all times. So the best practices and recommendations are to promote it, and this is in a bigger kind of workspace, and this is to avoid it getting to the stage where the patient needs to be reported, is to promote a culture of openness and support. That culture that exists in many, many healthcare departments of almost toxicity in terms of, when I was training, I worked 80 hours a week, so can they. And they're not being a place to exhibit vulnerability. That's what drives addiction. Addiction is not abuse of substances only. It's a loss of connection. So it's about establishing peer support networks. It's about simplifying reporting protocols and about regular wellness screening programs. This idea that especially junior doctors, because that's where I see most of my patients, it's the junior doctors who are struggling to cope with the workload, who are struggling to cope with loneliness, being away from home, many, many factors. It's about them feeling part of a bigger belonging and identity. And that only comes from strong peer support networks and a culture of openness, and not this culture that permeates all our departments where, hard work never killed anyone. It actually does. So I think it was important for me to mention that, talking about peer support networks, what was established during COVID with SADAG and some of the psychiatrists in Johannesburg is the Healthcare Workers Care Network, which is an organization that's been given funding where any doctor around the country or any healthcare worker around the country can contact them for confidential and free counseling services, referral to whoever in the multidisciplinary team that the person who answers the phone feels that they need. And I'm involved in the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and from what I know, the Healthcare Workers Care Network is busy, and people do call and people do access help. So I think it's been a big step in managing the stigma and reminding doctors that, people do believe that there are times in your life when you will need extra support, and then providing that support. So the Healthcare Workers Care Network is one example of how a peer support network can be very, very helpful. So what I think Sama should be doing, and I think that Sama does, and I think this webinar is a very good example of how Sama is getting into the space, is to advocate for better access to care and to train members in terms of recognition and referral, collaborate with the Health Professions Council to ensure fair processes, and to aim to build resilience in the profession. We can't train these doctors in all the clinical sciences and all the skills-based things, but not give them the emotional support required to do this difficult job. So in summary, substance misuse affects a significant portion of professionals. Treatment is available but underutilized, and mandatory reporting protects both patients and colleagues. And as SAMA members, you can lead the change through awareness and action. And that's my contact details and where I work if you would like to contact me or if you need references. But I kept the references very, very low for now. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow. Thanks, Dr. Parak. I'm sure you can see the round of applause going on the screen. So the topic is just so topical at the moment, and I think you've touched on a few important points. We are 4 minutes away from closing time, so I would like to field some questions. Dr. Lazarus, we'll get back to you. We're busy getting our media briefers to send us a response on the KZN case. We want to give you some up-to-date information. Let's just see. So there's a question from, I suppose, Dr. Gebe about the presenters, but the MC is on point. So I'll get Mbali to answer that, where she found me. And then love the presentation. Many doctors are under intense emotional stress and need to hear that there's help available. So that's great. Thanks, Dr. Lazarus. And then from Dr. Gebe again, I understand that an employer can do interventions, but at what point does the employer call it quits before reporting to the HPCSA? What steps the employer have to take? Number two, what are the expected measures that should be in place at work to actually fulfill the prevention is better than cure statement? Did you get that, Dr. Barak? Should I just summarize?
I did. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Great questions. So in terms of what steps the employer needs to take, I think that the reasonable man test comes into play. So there are no formal guidelines in terms of what steps need to be taken into place, but I think it would be under any kind of labor situation where there is a first warning and a second warning and then a disciplinary in that process. But in our case, our profession is a little bit different because there's also the added layer of physician impairment. And that physician impairment, as I said, has a whole lot of other implications because of the nature of the work that we do. So then the employer is obliged to refer the employee, in this case, a doctor or a healthcare worker, for mental health help. And if that, and then it's up to the mental health professional to say, listen, I think this patient is impaired and this is the process you go. But often employers also can do that impairment if it's obvious and a no-brainer, because sometimes it is.
Yeah.
And then the second question was, what are the expected measures that should be in place at work to actually fulfill the prevention is better than cure? That's a tricky question because every work environment is different. But once again, it's about reasonable measures, and reasonable measures in our setting is about, access to scheduled substances, keeping your control book, making sure that the numbers are not dwindling on your restricted substances, that sort of thing. And then very good leadership in terms of peer management, in terms of checking in with your staff, in terms of seeing if burnout is developing in your staff, and then referring quickly, early intervention, as I said.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Dr. Parak. I'm also occupational practitioner, and look, you can't really dismiss somebody, if they are using substances. You have to go through the whole process and actually do provide, rehabilitative, practices and so forth. And most companies are actually brought to light that they don't actually have a policy when they actually do find that one of the employees is using substances. Now, I can tell you there's substance abuse policies going around in provinces and hospitals and districts and so forth. But sometimes we ourselves don't read it and we don't know what's in it. A simple thing that I was just thinking about when I was doing my work at mines is that the mine workers has to blow, to check the alcohol level before they come on site. As doctors, are we asked to do a 5-panel drug test before we enter? Are we asked to blow? So that could go a far way in prevention, because then we as colleagues would then know that, listen, you're going to have to blow before you go on duty. So I think there's a lot that needs to happen, and it's food for thought. Dr. Mohammed, I hope I'm understanding your question correctly. So incidences of impaired doctors from work burnout, but not on substance abuse. I'm not sure if the question is there any incidents of impaired doctors from work burnout? Do you know any of that, Dr. Barak? Doctors are reported for burnout, or are there any
I think
statistics?
that I think that burnout in our profession is real and it's pervasive, because of that moral injury and because of the resource low environments that we're forced to work in. I don't know of any, I don't know that the committee will view it as an impairment, but rather as, I don't think it needs to get to the committee. I think at a mental health level, it needs to be taken seriously enough and be dealt with once again the aim being to reintegrate the employee back into the workplace,
Okay.
but recognizing that it's real and pervasive.
All right. Then we've got a question from Dr. Matibula. So, Dr. Barak, patients are usually stubborn and lack insight to their condition or situation. How then does one get them to present themselves for treatment instead of assisted admission?
So, I mean, as I said, it's about treating these patients who are also colleagues with dignity and sensitivity. And often their stubbornness and lack of insight is because of the stigma that they know that they're going to face. And so the not the threat, but the idea that there is a committee that will censure them and there's a risk of suspension is often a very good deterrent to them, agreeing to take all the help that they need.
Yeah,
So sometimes it's about, informing them that that's where this is heading if the correct steps are not put in place.
yeah, yeah. Good. So how to approach a peer about the suspicion of substance abuse to facilitate health-seeking behavior? This is from Dr. Kubeka Chauke. So if you are suspicious of your peer using substances, how do you approach them to seek help?
It's another good question and a tricky one.
Mm.
Because of that, because of the environments we work in and the high stress and the sense of camaraderie and not wanting to break that, it's about coming from a non-judgmental space and a space of we're still colleagues and I know you would do this for me were I in that situation. So it's almost as if you take away the emotion and you look at it, or you treat it as if it's a patient with heart disease or a brain tumor. It's an illness as much as everything else.
Yeah. So, Dr. Barak, maybe a question from my side. I think most of the question stems from colleagues working in the government sector or in the state sector, and working closely with colleagues in teams and so forth. We know the private space, because Summer obviously also looks at private practitioners. The private space is somewhat different, where everybody generates their own income. How do you, I mean, have you had any cases from private, where peers try to help each other, or is the route there probably just to help the colleague and then, just to report it to the HPCSA to help the colleague to sort of come around the back, instead of trying to approach your colleague, because it might be seen as, competition. You're seeing more patients than me, and now, people can perceive it in different ways. Do you have any experience around that in the private space?
I do know in our profession, we have a guiding society, which is the South African Society of Psychiatrists. And within SASOP, we have a group of older, mature colleagues who we call informally the elders. And what I do know happens within SASOP is that if a colleague in private or elsewhere is veering offline, whether it's professionally or substances or health, or then first the elders kind of arrange to meet with that colleague, and then if failing which, it then goes into levels of reporting and stuff. So we all, I think as professionals, we all do belong to some professional body, and I think that we should use that more as guides, especially the more mature professionals in our field.
All right, Dr. Barak, thank you so much. That was all our questions. There's still 265 participants on the call, and we are slap bang on 2015. And that seems to be, the time that we should end our webinar. So, Dr. Barak, once again, thank you very much. I'm sure the colleagues got hold of your details, and for those who need your services or your advice, they will definitely reach out to you. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence.
It's a pleasure.
So
Thank you
colleagues,
for having me.
no problem. Colleagues, thank you so much. That wraps up our webinar for this evening. And the only thing that's left for me to do is to do the closing. And obviously, like they say, a word of thanks. But thanks is a very short word, so I'm not going to go too long. So in the absence of the CEO, he had to leave. I just wanted to say thanks to Dr. Norikida for speaking to us about the role of AI in leadership development. And then to Dr. Nondumiso from Ubuntu Coaching. Thank you so much for your session in mentorship in medicine. And then Dr. Shabalala for the session on mindful living, for your wellness, and all the best with the preparation for your part ones exams in psychiatry. And then to Dr. Barak, who ended off the session for us in understanding and managing substance abuse in the healthcare space. So, colleagues, I always say in medicine, when I teach the students, that the eyes will never see what the mind doesn't know. So attending these sessions obviously sharpens the mind, and hence, the eyes can then see more. We all know that the optic radiation sits in the occipital lobe. So we got to train these lobes to do their function. If we don't train them, if we are just on autopilot, we'll miss opportunities. And then finally, I just wanted to say thanks to Dr. Nkomezulu Mbali. She's a public health registrar and works in the office at Summer. And she paid me large amounts of money to be the MC tonight. So that's one of the disclosures I want to do. No, I'm just joking. And then thank you to all the behind the scenes staff, Renier and colleagues. Thank you so much for making this worthwhile. So I want to end on the note of Dr. Lazarus's question regarding what happened about that intern in KZN. So Summer was involved there, and there was an urgent meeting that the Summer KZN branch and leadership had with the Prince Mshini Hospital, and that was already in May, soon after the incident. And the interns subsequently submitted a memorandum and a list of complaints. So Summer then engaged with the hospital management and the Department of Pediatrics, where we know where the consultant hailed from, for the immediate removal of that consultant. Summer then raised a formal letter to the HPCSA demanding a full investigation. Further, Summer requested the latest evaluation report from the HPCSA on the medical internship program at the Prince Mshini Hospital. So a social support initiative has been activated to assist the family of the intern, who was a Summer member during this difficult time. So there was some action, and Dr. Lazarus, as promised by Renier, we will get a full updated report to you. For those who also want to be copied on that report, please just reach out to Renier Also then make sure obviously that you are SAMA members, because I mean it would be easier to find your contact details, and I think we would really want to share that information and give you the most up-to-date version on what happened to that case. But with that said, our thoughts and our condolences are still with the family and with our colleague that has passed on. I'm sure that that wound has not healed yet for the family and most of the close colleagues that worked with our colleague. So with that said, colleagues, thank you very, 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 very much. And we see you at the next webinar. Thank you so much for your time. Have a good evening further.
Thank you, Dr. Hotel.
Thank you, Renier. Thank you, colleagues.